The world blinked, and Prince Louis vanished from sight. No more school appearances, no royal balcony waves, no innocent smiles caught by the press. Overnight, the youngest beacon of the monarchy simply disappeared. And now, just moments ago, the palace confirmed why. But what they said is only half the story, because behind that statement lies a trail of whispers, concealed documents, and one heart-wrenching decision that changed everything. Before we dive deeper into what this truly means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For weeks, murmurs rippled through royal watching circles. At first, it seemed like a simple oversight, perhaps a child staying home with a cold, or simply being kept away from the media circus. But as event after event passed and Prince Louis remained conspicuously absent, those whispers turned into urgent questions. Why was the young prince, so vibrant and so beloved, no longer part of the public stage? Then came the official engagements, moments of tradition, carefully choreographed and deeply symbolic. Prince George stood tall beside his father. Princess Charlotte, poised as ever, offered her regal smile. But the space once filled by Louis' spark was empty. No explanation, no photographs, not even a passing mention. Concern grew into confusion when 3 major royal appearances, each expected to include the full Wales family, featured only 4 members. First the Commonwealth Day service, then the Trooping the Colour, and finally the Remembrance Sunday ceremony. Each time, Louis was absent. Each time, the palace remained silent. And each time, speculation intensified. The British public, famed for reading between the royal lines, sensed something was off. For a monarchy so obsessed with image, this silence felt deafening. Was this an internal decision? A health concern? A quiet rebellion by the Wales, or something far worse? The absence began to feel less like discretion and more like concealment. Then came the moment that stunned everyone. Just 1 minute ago, as headlines screamed across screens worldwide, the palace broke its silence. The statement was brief, clinical, almost too carefully worded. It referenced a decision made in the best interest of the young prince's well-being and cited a period of protected time away from public life. But for those who understand how the royal machine operates, that language wasn't comforting, it was code. This wasn't simply about privacy. This was about something that had gone wrong, terribly wrong. Buried beneath the polished words was an unmistakable undertone, something chilling, something urgent. The palace was not just acknowledging Louis' absence, it was confirming that the decision to remove him from view wasn't temporary. It was the result of something bigger, something hidden, something they could no longer control. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when the palace chooses silence, it is never without reason. This isn't the first time a royal child has been hidden away from public life. It happened before, with devastating consequences. The shadows behind the crown are long, and once a child disappears into them, the road back is rarely straightforward. To grasp the full weight of this disappearance, we must rewind to the first signs that something within the royal corridors was deeply, tragically wrong. Cameras captured it all, but no one noticed. The last time Prince Louis stood beside his family on that iconic balcony, his body language whispered what his lips never said. In light of the palace's bombshell confirmation, those overlooked moments now carry a haunting new meaning. At first glance, it looked like every other celebration. The royal family assembled in full view, waving to the adoring public, offering smiles that seemed polished and practiced. But one figure, small and unassuming, stood differently. Prince Louis, usually animated and full of unpredictable charm, stood strangely still. His hands, often the source of viral mischief, remained clenched. His expression was blank, almost rehearsed. Frame by frame, what once appeared as childish shyness now revealed something deeper, something quietly pleading to be seen. A renowned child behavior analyst later dissected the footage, and her conclusions stunned those who listened. Louis, she said, exhibited signs of emotional withdrawal, averted eye contact, tense posture, and the kind of fidgeting that suggested internal anxiety rather than playful restlessness. She noted how he subtly leaned away from the crowd, how his shoulders stiffened every time a cheer erupted from below. These weren't the actions of a child enjoying his moment, they were silent red flags of someone struggling to hold it together. Then there was Catherine. To most, her elegant smile masked any trace of concern. But one fleeting moment stood out upon rewatch, a glance, barely a second. Her eyes flicked toward her son, not with pride, but with worry. Subtle, but unmistakable. A mother checking in, not for reassurance, but out of fear that something could go wrong. And in that fleeting look, her mask slipped. Even more unsettling was the signal. During the anthem, Prince William shifted slightly, eyes scanning the crowd, landing on one of his senior aides positioned discreetly behind the family. He nodded once, firm, and the aide stepped back into the shadows. No one noticed at the time, but the implications, in hindsight, impossible to ignore. Was it a prearranged cue? A silent order to end Louis' appearances after that day? Insiders say it wasn't the first time William had taken matters into his own hands to protect his children. And then there's what the press didn't print. A handful of photographers, sworn to royal protocol, later admitted in confidence that they were given strict instructions: no close-ups of Louis, no solo shots, no lingering lenses. One even received a discreet embargo request hours before the event, an instruction that baffled them at the time. But now, it fits perfectly into a puzzle we never realized we were assembling. That final balcony appearance wasn't just another royal tradition, it was a silent farewell, orchestrated not with words, but with glances, stillness, and quiet retreat. The palace knew what was coming. The family knew. But the public was left to cheer for a moment that, in reality, marked the beginning of a disappearance. Yet the signs didn't stop at the balcony. Inside the palace, a growing storm was quietly spiraling out of control. Catherine tried everything to shield him, from protocols, from pressure, from the crown itself. Once seen as the monarchy's calm center, she became its most desperate protector. Behind the palace's pristine walls, she begged for one thing: let him go. Behind the palace gates, where tradition governs even the softest of whispers, a different story was unfolding, one of a mother's silent war against a machine too powerful, too polished to allow deviation. It began quietly. Handwritten letters, private, raw, and filled with the kind of worry only a mother could voice, found their way to King Charles and select senior aides. In them, Catherine pleaded for her son to be spared. She didn't ask for pity, she asked for space, for compassion, for a pause from the endless performance that was slowly unraveling her child. In those letters, Catherine detailed what no press photo ever showed: emotional shifts at home, sudden tears without cause, Louis retreating into silence, his once carefree laughter replaced by anxious murmurs and quiet questions. She noted how he flinched at the sound of camera shutters, resisted royal tutors, and began hiding during visits from palace aides. It wasn't tantrums, it was a cry for help. Even as Catherine watched her son's inner world unravel, she was forced to balance the suffocating duality of her role. She was not just a mother, she was the future queen consort. Every action she took carried political weight, every request faced scrutiny. And as her desperation grew, so did the resistance. Palace advisors warned her that withdrawing Louis would ignite rumors, headlines, and panic. They urged silence, control, and the preservation of the monarchy's image. But Catherine wasn't concerned with appearances. Her focus was entirely on her child. The conflict inside her became unbearable. On some nights, she reportedly refused to attend engagements unless Louis' situation was addressed. Staff noticed a shift in her demeanor. Once poised and diplomatic, she had become tense and unyielding. One aide recalled her walking out of a planning session after a remark about managing the Louis situation. The next day, she sent another letter, not a request this time, but an ultimatum. The situation reached a breaking point when Louis, expected at a ceremonial unveiling with his siblings, refused to leave his room. No coaxing or promises could persuade him. It was the moment Catherine had feared. When the palace insisted on a last-minute appearance, she drew a firm line, and did not attend herself. It was the first time she had defied the royal calendar since joining the family, sending shockwaves through the palace corridors. Yet the institution remained unmoved. Protocol demanded stability, emotional fractures were seen as having no place in the equation. Catherine's fight was far from over. Her public silence masked a storm raging in private. And though her concerns were dismissed in the war rooms of royal imagemakers, someone else had begun to listen, someone far closer to the throne and far more dangerous when provoked. Even Prince William began to question whether the family's future was being sacrificed for a centuries-old legacy. Born to rule, he watched the crown's impact on his son and everything changed. Behind closed doors, the stoic heir reached his breaking point. What transpired at Clarence House, in a meeting never meant to happen, has been described by insiders as the most explosive family confrontation since the Diana years. King Charles sat at the head of the room, flanked by Queen Camilla, while William entered late, silent, cold, and carrying a folder. Inside were reports, letters, emotional accounts from Catherine, and the most damning document of all, a signed warning from Louis's physician. The discussion quickly escalated. Initially, William maintained composure, outlining his concerns about his son's emotional decline, Catherine's pleas, and the palace's refusal to adapt. But when Camilla allegedly interrupted, suggesting Louis might simply be going through a sensitive phase, William snapped. Standing, slamming the folder shut, he declared, "Is not your puppet." The room fell silent. Charles attempted to calm him, insisting everyone was acting in Louis's best interests. But William, voice trembling with fury, accused the palace, particularly Camilla's camp, of manipulating Louis for public favor. He cited an internal memo proposing a family-friendly appearance with Louis to boost intergenerational support, an act he called both manipulative and dangerous. As the confrontation intensified, a senior aide tried to redirect the discussion to protocol, warning that deviating from scheduled appearances would leave a media vacuum. William reportedly replied, "Then let them speculate. I'd rather they chase shadows than break my son." Even Charles was stunned by his son's resolve. William went further. Not in anger, but in calm determination, he issued a threat: if the palace did not back down and remove Louis from all future public engagements, he and Catherine would consider stepping back from royal duties indefinitely. He neither raised his voice nor begged, he simply drew a boundary no heir had dared set before. It was more than rebellion, it was a fracture. The monarchy had always relied on William's sense of duty and loyalty, but now he was no longer just the heir, he was a father, and no crown was worth the destruction of his child. Amid the palace's scramble to contain the fallout, a deeper fear emerged, one not driven by public opinion but by something far darker, a single confidential document. Tucked away in a private London clinic, the report was never meant to leave the room, but it did. What it revealed about Prince Louis sent shockwaves through the royal family, forcing decisions no parent should face. Delivered silently, the report contained the results of a confidential evaluation Catherine had quietly authorized weeks earlier. Louis's behavioral shifts were no longer minor concerns, they were affecting his daily life. Emotional outbursts, silent withdrawals, and moments of complete inaccessibility even to those closest to him painted a worrying picture. And though Catherine had dreaded the findings, she was unprepared for what she read. The report identified signs of a rare neurological sensitivity. While manageable, it was being significantly worsened by high-pressure environments, crowds, cameras, and royal ceremonies. The condition could not be ignored. Continued public exposure, according to the physician, risked lasting psychological damage. The solution was clear: immediate and extended removal from all public and press engagements. But instead of swift action, the report was quietly passed to the palace's internal communications and optics team, whose job was not to protect children, but to protect the crown's image. They stalled, scheduled meetings, assessed PR risks, and drafted strategy memos. Meanwhile, Louis became increasingly withdrawn and reactive. The palace chose perception over protection, and Catherine knew it. One of the most private and devastating moments in modern royal history followed. Alone in her Kensington quarters, Catherine reread the report repeatedly, growing more shaken with each line. According to insiders, she collapsed into tears, unable to comprehend how those around her could rationalize exposing her son to harm for the sake of appearances. That night, she cancelled all engagements for the coming week, shut her door, and went entirely off the grid for the first time since her wedding. Behind the scenes, panic began to spread. Alarmed by the inaction, the physician reportedly warned the palace that further delays would breach ethical boundaries. Pressure mounted. William, still reeling from the confrontation with his father and Camilla, now held undeniable proof in his hands. The medical truth had arrived, a fact that could neither be spin-doctored nor ignored. Yet, just as the crown braced for the storm ahead, an unexpected rupture appeared. Someone had already leaked parts of the report. Someone inside the system wanted the world to know. As the medical revelation sparked panic, an even deeper threat began to haunt the royal corridors, one not born of biology but of betrayal. This truth was supposed to remain within the family. Yet someone inside the palace sought to broadcast it, or perhaps to twist it. Leaks about Louis's condition began surfacing in the tabloids, and as accusations spread in every direction, one name repeatedly appeared, and she was no stranger to scandal. The first leak was subtle, a single line buried in a mid-tier royal gossip column, suggesting that Prince Louis faced challenges requiring him to be temporarily removed from public duties. Most readers dismissed it. But within a week, more precise and disturbingly accurate details emerged, references to private consultations, mentions of behavioral therapy, even vague hints of a sensitive diagnosis. As the headlines grew louder, it became clear that someone with inside access was feeding the press. A review of the timeline revealed an undeniable pattern. Every leak followed confidential internal meetings involving only a small circle of senior royals and advisors. Yet, within hours, whispers from those same rooms were appearing in tabloids renowned for royal scoops. Suspicion quickly replaced speculation, and within Kensington Palace, trust began to fracture. What worsened matters was the belief that the source wasn't just anyone. Rumors suggested that Camilla's communications team, known for their aggressive press strategy, had access to documents that should have been restricted to William and Catherine's inner circle. Whispers claimed a senior staffer loyal to Camilla had seen private notes concerning Louis's health. If true, it wasn't merely a violation, it was sabotage masquerading as spin. The breaking point came when Catherine, unable to remain silent, requested a private meeting with Camilla. According to a senior household aide, the atmosphere was icy. Catherine didn't raise her voice or accuse directly, but her words were cutting. "You've gone too far this time." It wasn't a confrontation between two royal women, it was a mother drawing a line, and everyone present understood the gravity. Days later, the Queen's press secretary abruptly resigned, no explanation, no farewell statement, simply gone. Royal commentators noted the timing was unlikely coincidental. Behind the scenes, Charles reportedly ordered an internal investigation, but, like so many royal inquiries, the results were never released. The palace cited privacy, others suggested damage control. For William, this was the final straw. Already shaken by systemic failures to protect his son, he acted decisively. Several aides suspected of ties to the leaker were permanently removed from Kensington operations. Access was restricted, briefings limited, and for the first time, William and Catherine began holding key meetings off-site, away from palace walls they no longer trusted. This wasn't just a leak. It was a betrayal piercing the heart of a family already under immense pressure. While the monarchy struggled to contain the damage, the cracks were visible to the world. But the final blow came not from within, but from a whisper outside the palace gates. She was Louis's constant, his confidant, his comfort, and now his unexpected advocate. The private journal of Louis's former nanny, never meant to be found, revealed a side of royal life the world had never imagined, truths too painful to ignore. The discovery was accidental. A retired palace housekeeper, sorting through an old set of luggage in a rarely used storage room on the Sandringham estate, found a small leather-bound journal tucked between folded children's clothes and a faded toy. The handwriting was delicate but firm, the pages raw, honest, and, as it turned out, explosive. The journal belonged to Louis's former full-time nanny, a woman personally chosen by Catherine and trusted beyond standard staff protocol. In those pages, she poured out her heart, not only about her bond with the young prince but also about the unraveling she had witnessed firsthand. These entries were not written for an audience, they were reflections, confessions, cries for help that no one was supposed to hear. One early entry described Louis's vivid, frightening dreams. He told her he feared people watching him from the walls and disliked wearing the same clothes as his siblings because it made him feel like a statue. She wrote about how he clung to her in the evenings, begging to stay with her instead of attending royal rehearsals. It wasn't defiance, it was fear, pure and simple. The journal also detailed the aftermath of the final balcony appearance. The nanny noted a marked change in Louis, refusing eye contact, hiding under his bed when staff arrived, whispering to himself when alone. Catherine, she recorded, confided in her during one particularly painful night. They cried together, not as employer and staff, but as two women witnessing a child being broken by duty. Perhaps the most disturbing entries came weeks later. The nanny documented late-night visits from an unnamed senior royal. She never confirmed their identity, but described the presence as cold, authoritative, and always unannounced. Louis often wept afterward, saying he didn't want to be their little soldier. The implication sent shivers through anyone who read it. The final pages, written just before the nanny's departure, showed her writing had become erratic, desperate. The last line, scribbled hurriedly, read simply, "He's safer in silence." 6 words that now resonate louder than any official statement ever could. With the nanny's truth unearthed, the palace had no choice but to face the consequences, culminating in a shocking confirmation that shattered royal tradition. No fanfare, no emotion, just one carefully worded paragraph delivered to global newsrooms. Beneath the cold formality, however, lies a story still untold and a decision revealing more than it conceals. The statement landed in inboxes just after sunrise, marked only as a clarification on current speculation. Brief and no longer than 6 lines, it referenced a temporary adjustment to Prince Louis's public engagements to support his ongoing emotional wellness and development. There were no details, no physician names, no explanation of cause, just vague reassurance wrapped in neutral language designed to calm without confessing. In royal communication, such caution speaks volumes. The phrase emotional wellness stood out like a flare in a fog. It was not a diagnosis, not an acknowledgement, simply a placeholder, a calculated phrase used to say something without truly saying anything at all. Insiders immediately recognized the tactic: when the palace wants control, it leans on ambiguity. This time, however, the public wasn't buying it. The silence had already generated too much noise. Comparisons were immediate. When Archie was absent from royal proceedings, the palace remained silent for weeks before citing privacy. When Prince George missed an event, it was attributed to school. But this was different. The statement didn't place Louis with tutors or on holiday. It left him in a grey zone of undefined vulnerability, a red flag disguised as compassion. Reactions were swift and divided. Some praised the Wales family for prioritizing their son's well-being, even against tradition. Others demanded transparency, questioning what the monarchy was hiding. Conspiracy theories exploded across social media, with hashtags speculating everything from secret illness to internal exile. Through it all, one thing stood out: neither William nor Catherine spoke a single word. Their silence, louder than any press release, became the center of a new storm. Royal commentators noted that in past scandals, divorces, health crises, and public attacks, the couple had always found a way to address the public. But now, there was nothing. No statement, no photo, no gesture. The most visible royal family in modern history had chosen invisibility, leaving the world to draw its own conclusions. As for Prince Louis, his future remains a mystery. The palace statement made no mention of when, if ever, he would return to public life, no mention of royal duties, no hint of succession planning. Once celebrated as the monarchy's light-hearted darling, he had quietly been removed from the stage, a shadow where a smile once shone. But while the official word had been delivered, one final twist suggests that Louis's disappearance may not be just about protection, it may have been prophecy. Hidden deep within the forgotten archives of a late queen's confidant lies a strange prophecy, one that once seemed like poetic nonsense but now feels frighteningly real: the youngest shall bear the burden, and his silence shall shake the crown. Could Prince Louis's removal have been destined all along? Long before he was born, even before William and Catherine's wedding, Queen Elizabeth reportedly maintained a private relationship with a discreet spiritual advisor, whose presence was never acknowledged publicly but whose influence quietly shaped some of the Queen's most personal decisions. Among the dusty journals of this advisor, stored deep within Windsor's sealed estate collection, lay a passage that has recently resurfaced. Its words, once dismissed as harmless mysticism, now being revisited with urgent attention. Written just weeks after Prince Harry's birth, it contained cryptic warnings: the heir shall wrestle with shadow. The spare shall flee from light, but the youngest unseen shall bear the burden none shall name. At the time, royal archivists assumed it was symbolic, perhaps a reflection on Charles's future lineage or a metaphor for family legacy. but following Louis's disappearance, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Queen Elizabeth's fascination with this advisor was no casual interest. Insiders say she often invited the spiritual confidant to Balmoral for private readings. Even more startling is the claim, never officially verified but consistently whispered, that this same seer once predicted Princess Diana's fall from favor, as well as the eventual breakdown of Charles's marriage. A second diary entry, written during Catherine's first pregnancy, reportedly referenced a third child of both clarity and chaos, who would vanish to protect what others fear to name. There's more. Unpublished notes from a conversation between Elizabeth and Catherine, recorded by a now-retired lady-in-waiting, described the Queen warning her granddaughter-in-law of a great silence to come. She allegedly said, "It will not be your first child who carries the name, nor the second. It will be the third who feels the weight none of us ever chose." At the time, Catherine was reportedly confused, even amused. Today, those words carry an unnerving weight. Why was this prophecy never revealed to the public? Some say it was buried intentionally, considered too dangerous or bizarre to share. Others believe it was simply forgotten, left to gather dust in pages no one dared take seriously. But if the prophecy fits, if the pattern aligns, then Prince Louis's disappearance was not merely a response to crisis, it may have been the fulfillment of something long foretold, something no one could prevent, no matter how hard they tried. Was this fate unfolding on its own? Or was it orchestrated by those who believed in the prophecy, deliberately moving to fulfill it? Was Louis being protected, or silenced? Did the monarchy bend to mysticism, or did it use the myth as a shield for something darker? The mystery deepens, not with answers, but with new questions echoing through history. What price does the crown demand when it falls upon the innocent? Thanks for watching.